Okay, so Gina, the Mohawk Council is consulting or heading into consultations with the community on the issue of possibly getting into cannabis. Can you give us a little bit of detail on that?
Currently, we are starting the educational promotions that you'll see out there. We want to inform people on the medical aspect as well as the recreational aspect, because there is a significant difference between the two. And once we finish the educational portion of it, then we want to get the consultation underway and get feedback. There's going to be a survey that'll be done, a telephone survey. We're targeting for 300 plus, so that we get a good group from the community, a good a number that is appropriate for our size of the community. Mm-hmm. And we'll do our consultation with the local organizations. So there's a lot of work involved, but I've been part of the tobacco working group, and it's something that we've already started doing in the past. Not to this extent with the educational aspect and then the telephone survey, mm-hmm. but as far as gauging community, so a little bit of experience in it.
Right, with tumultuous files.
Right.
Right. Tell me a little bit about how did you guys come to that decision to say this is something we're going to explore?
Well, because it's going to become a reality for us, right? I mean, with the legalization of it, we really have no recourse. There's going to be no avenues. People are going to be allowed to utilize the product. What we wanted to ensure was that we have regulations that are going to protect the community and not have a repeat of what happened in the tobacco industry. The government handed out several permits, right. I believe 21 at one point, gave people permission to manufacture, but then the provinces ended up charging them for trying to move their product and transport it. And we're going to have the same sort of problem here again, because the federal government is going to be giving out the permits, but it's going to be the provinces who are going to be distributing again. So there's going to be two levels right. of government involved again. Mm-hmm. And there's the concern also from community members as well as council about having these distribution shops opening up within the community. It's an issue. So I think it's very important that we consult with the community and look at what the future landscape looks like, because I compare it with alcohol. There was prohibition at one time, and it was not a legal product. It became a legal product, and it also became a problem for us. So we have to combat that, knowing that July of 2018 they're going to legalize the product, and we want to protect the community. And at the same time, there is going to be an industry that grows around that. So what does that mean for Kahnawake? Mm-hmm. And that's why the education is important, at looking at the industry side of it, the recreational use of it, the legislation that's needed around it. Do we put in our own legislation? Do we accept Quebec and Canada's legislation?
Do you have a choice?
We always have a choice when it comes to Kahnawake. Mm-hmm. If we decide to put in our own legislation, that's what we will be guiding ourselves by, mm-hmm. As we have with tobacco.
Right.
Again, and the ABC, we have the alcohol and beverage law here in the community, and that's what we're governed by. Mm-hmm. So it's not by the external governments. And that's what we're looking at, like what is the tolerance for community? Looking at the industry side of it, it's a whole other perspective, Mm-hmm. And I think it's getting comfortable with the fact that this is a legalized product, or going to be, for recreational use, because currently, yes, it's a legalized product when it comes to the medical use, and people are utilizing it. And as we're finding out that more and more people are using it for different things, not just pain management, which is something that people, associated it with at one point, but as the research goes along, they're finding it's beneficial in many areas. And unfortunately, in North America, the research is very far behind, mm-hmm. as we had learned in a conference that we went to in Toronto on cannabis. I mean, Israel is way up there in research, and their findings are showing all the benefits in different diseases and different strains that they extract from the product.
Right.
So
yeah, it's not
about getting high.
Yeah. Yeah, it's become more than that.
Yes.
But going back to your comment about, navigating those political waters and even, the other enforcement side or the legal side, in the other industries such as tobacco and alcohol, we've run into some issues with regulation in terms of some of our people ending up in court in Quebec or, gas even. How would this be any different in terms of being able to come in at the top and then regulate, but also have our laws accepted or recognized by the province to the point where people aren't ending up in court or lawsuits or taxation issues?
Well, one of the things we're looking at right now as far as, legislation is to ensure that we don't end up with outside governments giving permits to conduct whatever kind of business they want in our territory without us having to have our say and even accept. And that's one of the things that, we've been talking about as the working group, is there was a point in time, I believe it was back in the 80s, where First Nations communities were given the option to be a dry community or a wet community. And now we're saying, well, why isn't the government looking at that now and making that carve out for First Nations? So, there's so much to delve into when it comes into, this industry and how it affects us, and we're not being properly consulted. And that's why for us to ensure, to protect our own selves, we need to start looking at it and really seeing what we can do to ensure that, outside governments don't start supplying these permits and then people get arrested. So I think we have to take care first and foremost internally.
When you guys are, began to explore the possibility of getting into marijuana and hemp, or is it just marijuana? Well,
we looked at everything because people had, been reaching out to us and asking us if we were aware of these industries. So it's just all in the exploration stages, if people feel like hemp is something worth looking at, if the community comes back with that. We could always look at that too, because it kind of goes almost not quite hand in hand, but we see hemp as being used in clothing and tents and different things. Right. It's not only a product that's ingested. So.
And is there an industry for it, a marketplace for us to be in that industry as a community? So would you be looking at manufacturing and distribution, or just manufacturing?
Well, the way it's currently set up with the exterior government is, when they do manufacturing for cannabis, you cannot distribute from there. Like, the distribution centers are going to be something different.
Okay. So would that be like a spin-off industry for other individuals, or would the Mohawk Council try to regulate that here also?
Well, if the community really feels there's a need for us to do that, I think we need to do that. It's part of, what we're trying to stop from happening is having these outlets all over, right? Because, again, we've seen that in the tobacco industry where all permits were given out and people said, well, I have this permit, But Kahnawake, with its own legislation, will trump that.
Right. What would the enforcement side of that look like? Because even in the tobacco industry, it's hard to compare because it was here and then there was a lot of regulation issues. But if you're coming in with trying to regulate from the top, would you be able to enforce that? Say, for example, and I know I'm speaking hypothetical, but if a cigarette store was like, well, I'm going to get involved in this because I have my own cigarette store and, I'm going to do my own thing and I'm going to sell hemp products and things that you would be able to use within that same industry. How would you regulate that from happening so that it doesn't end up becoming a price war with stores that are regulated under those permits?
Again, it'll go back to what the regulations end up looking like, when we have our own Justice Act and we're trying to ensure that the laws that are made within Kahnawake are able to be heard in our own community.
Right.
And that's the long-term goal. We are on our way there. How long it'll be before we get there, well, that's another issue, but we've overcome some good obstacles, I think, in the recent years, and passing the Justice Act, and enactment is the big part now.
What did you think about Chief Carl Horn's comments to us, I think it was about a month ago, when he was like, I don't think it should be here. We're supposed to be a zero tolerance on drugs in the community. He said he wasn't speaking as a chief, but as a father and friend, and I don't mean any disrespect, but he is the chief on council. So, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, everybody has their own, views. I'm very big on being able to put your views out there. Mm-hmm. People need to know where chiefs stand, I think. We shouldn't just be able to speak in private. Mm-hmm. Whether people agree with you or not, that's another thing. But I think when it comes to voting time, people should really know what is on your mind, what you're thinking, and what perspective you have, mm-hmm. The position you're coming from. And that goes, that would lead me into talking about the accountability and the assessment process that I think we need to develop for our chiefs. Mm-hmm. I always say, we need to have people be able to gauge, their chiefs as they're voting. It shouldn't be based on, just hearsay. There's got to be mechanisms to say, what somebody's done, what their position is, and really know what that person is doing for you and how they're working, Yeah. So I have nothing against, his statements. They're his statements. They're his position. For myself, I'll tell you on a personal view, I'm more open-minded because my son wanted to receive marijuana for his pain management. Mm-hmm. And then I find out, and I was reluctant, of course, and I find out later on that it helps with seizures, and he passed away from a seizure. Mm-hmm. So in the back of my mind, I always wonder, had, I helped him push to get that product, maybe he would still be here, because now we're finding out how it helps in other ways. So I have my own personal views on all of that. Yeah. And I tell people that, I put it out there. This product is medically helping people. And I'm glad, because I see people suffering all the time with different health issues. And if it can alleviate it without causing addiction, because we hear that, the rates of addiction are not quite the same as some of the medically pharmaceuticals, I should say. Mm-hmm. So that's my personal view. Yeah. The reality for us is it's going to be a legalized product, as with alcohol, and I have my own issues with alcohol too. Mm-hmm. Being a former peacekeeper, I've seen what alcohol can do. Mm-hmm. It's very destructive, yet it's a legalized product and it's accepted for consuming. So,
right. There's some criticism to that too, right? That while we already have gambling in the community, we already have alcohol in the community, we already have venues and bars, and now we want to get into more gaming, and we want to get into now legalizing or allowing marijuana to be promoted, if you will, in the territory, and also we're cultivating it. And what do you think about that?
Well, for myself, the reality is these things are going on right now anyways, and they're unregulated when it comes to the marijuana and the recreational use. And the illegal market is adding things to the marijuana. So people don't even know what they're actually smoking, and that's kind of scary. With regulation, at least there's going to be, a safe product that's going to be produced for people to consume, and they're going to use it in a recreational fashion as they do with alcohol, to sit back and relax and do whatever it is that they do on their time out. And the reality is it's going on right now. And for us to say that, we're not going to accept these laws, again, I'll go back to saying, how do we combat them then? Because there's going to be no forum for which to prosecute somebody. Mm-hmm. So.
Right. And you make some good points. On the flip side of that, there is discussion in the community that addresses the fact that it's happening, people are doing it, it's already here, so we might as well regulate it. And with that also comes, what are the benefits of getting into this industry as a community where the community could benefit as a whole as opposed to individuals doing it?
Well, that's why council's taking a look at the economic development side of that, and whether the community would want to see an actual facility here that would be something that's land-based, where it would create jobs. And of course the product gets exported to the distributors, or however Quebec decides to do that process. The other part is we can invest in a facility that's already out there, that's already utilizing the medical side of it, which will develop into the recreational with coming legalization. And then we would have the revenue generation as we do with Mohawk Online. We've seen some direct benefits now, which is the splash pad and the Mohawk language program at Ardidiwanirats is going to have some funded injected into that. So now they can have 2 programs running. It's all about getting monies into the community to fill the voids too that the government has cut back on. The reality is the government has tried to cut back so much. Finally, with this new government, they've injected into education. It's a good start, but it's not enough. So there's many needs. The health sector. We look at the medicines that are provided. They're either not covered or it's a generic brand, and people can't actually have the one that they want. It's the one that's paid for. So dental, big issue. A lot of people, reapplying and hoping to get an okay on their dental needs from children to adults. So, we look at all these things and we're saying, okay, we need to generate revenue and try and get our community members what they need directly to them. And that's what this socioeconomic, sort of project is about, if the community wants that. The casino was another topic that has been floating in and about the community, for several years. And again, it was based on the need to cover, the costs that we have, for not just projects, but anything actually at this point, when it comes to enhancing the quality of life for our community. Because we do have a good quality of life, and I think we've worked very hard to provide all the services that people need, even from the minimal ones like snow shoveling. Who would have thought there was such a need? But you know what? There is for our elderly, and we're happy to be able to provide those things. I refer to that because every year we struggle to make sure we find the funding to cover those costs. So we can expand upon that, looking at, summer months, they need somebody to mow their lawn. Like, all these extra revenues will enhance the quality of life for people directly who need it, I think is important. And it helps just the community in general. People are starting different businesses. There's monies that have become available. And people are taking steps to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're doing here.
Mohawk Council often gets criticized just about on everything, but specifically talking, with getting into business, you guys, the Mohawk Council gets a lot of criticism about, well, government shouldn't be in business. But where do you pull your statistics from? Do you guys do some networking with economic development, or to gauge the type of industry that should be in the community? Because there's also, well, you're criticized for trying to get into business, but you're also criticized for the type of business that you choose to get into. So where do you gauge in what direction you should go in as a table?
Well, with Paul Rice, who's head of our finance department, along with Dewa Dunizakta, a lot of research is done on their part on projects. Some projects just come directly to us. People bring us projects and say, listen, can I present to you on this idea? So, that's just how things have been evolving. This mandate, this term, we've been looking at, revenue generation as one of the priorities. Again, I'll refer back to the Justice Act. We need to finance that also. And it's very important that we find revenues in order to put, you know, that into effect, into place. So that's been one of the council priorities. What the future will look like, I'm not sure. We definitely need to look at the DEWA mandate, which is being done right now, and kind of restructure so that, yes, MCK is a little bit less in the business and looking at business, but when you have businesses that are that controversial or industries that controversial, we have to be involved. We have to gauge communities' acceptance and tolerance of, you know, some of these industries. And we want to educate people so that it's just not a resounding no because it's MCK. Ultimately, the dollars are not to come back just to MCK. These dollars are what is feeding community and enhancing the quality of life here.
And you make a good point that you can't escape that political side of those industries that are seen as more controversial or tumultuous. I mean, I don't know what kind of backlash you guys get in terms of the poker houses going up in the community, but I do remember reporting on this like a decade ago.
Right.
I'm aging myself, but I remember at the time it was a big issue, but as you know, we progress as a community and the evolution of the community moves forward, it becomes less of a controversial subject and more acceptance, especially as newer generations come up. But is that ever a worry, even to you as a parent? You have children who are millennials, and what type of industry or what type of economy will they be in, you know, as this age group comes into the next generation of having to deal with some of these issues in the community? So do you ever think like, oh, well, as a council, but even as a parent, we are moving in the right direction? Like,
definitely. I mean, that's always like first and foremost on my mind. I mean, you know, my life at my age is, you know, I'm going to go into my settlement years and retirement years. You know, it won't be that long off. And I look at, you know, my children and my grandchildren and everyone else's grandchildren that are coming up and what's going to be here for them. You know, and I think giving them the resources that they need, and that starts with financial resources, so that these kids have a shot at doing whatever it is they want to do, whether it takes them getting education or startup money for business or whatever it may be. I'd like to see them, you know, have the opportunities to be independent as they like, and not be bound and confined by, you know, the financial situation that we once were in, because we're not anymore. You know, we've had the sale of the Continent 8 shares. There's been an injection of money through the gaming and us regulating that industry within our own territory. It's helped us. You know, the poker houses have shown how professional they can be. I mean, the World Poker Tour stops here in Kahnawake.
right.
The poker house as well as the restaurant, you know, they're very well known, very well attended, and we have another one that has, you know, just opened back, and I mean, it's all top quality, and people like coming here. There's good service. So in that industry, I mean, we've proven ourselves. As far as the database and you know what we were involved in at one time, it's evolved, and the time came, you know, for the sale. But now we're actual gamers, and you know that has had a nice injection into the community for finances, and we're going to see direct benefit. I mean, I can't wait to go to the splash pad and be able to watch the kids and even my own grandkids to take them there.
Right.
So these are the kinds of things that, you know, are always on my mind when I look at the future of Kahnawake.
Yeah. And, you know, and tying in what you just said, like the service is good. A lot of these larger establishments are run professionally, but what is the draw to people from outside of the community? They come here and we get a lot of tourism and business from not just local but non-local. And a lot of people say, well, it's the tax. You know, they don't pay tax. We are a tax-free nation, community. But there's some worry there, right? With taxation, people are saying, well, it's coming, it's coming. I don't know what they're basing that analogy, if you will, on, or even the basis of it. But do you have anything, maybe, you know, when it comes to taxation, and even in this industry or any other industry, is the Mohawk Council gauging the community on these worries, and where are they coming from?
Well, I think it's coming from a group of community members talking about taxation. I'm told that some had called Ottawa and talked with Ottawa directly and asking about taxation. There is a plan for taxation if you buy into self-government, and you'd be required to collect taxes and things, but Kahnawake never signed on to self-government. And I know some people like to say that they have, but we have documents that prove we haven't. Mm-hmm. And we won't go down that road. Whatever the taxation landscape ends up looking like, if there ever were to be one, it would have to be independent to Kahnawake. Mm-hmm. I mean, the big argument with the governments, external governments, is that their citizens are not to benefit from tax-free status. Can't really argue that, really. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's one of the things that they're firm on, and we can understand that. Mm-hmm. That's our benefit and mm-hmm. our right that we received for all our losses, right? Yeah. So, but as far as any kind of tax regime, I mean, that's so far, that's even further than, we have so many situations that are based on tax now, and a lot of people are trying to use the gas tax decision through courts, and we're saying to Quebec, okay, we understand you have that, but we're not talking about courts here, we're talking about nation-to-nation agreements, mm-hmm. and that has to be our starting point. So it's a long road. I mean,
it's a deep discussion.
It's a very deep discussion, and we're nowhere near any sort of agreement. I know people are saying, "Oh, we're making agreements." We're not even at the beginning stage because we've already agreed to disagree, and what we need to do is consult with community again on that issue. Mm-hmm. We have had meetings with the gas retailers, but because it goes beyond the gas retailers, we want to consult with all of community and especially retailers in any industry. The thing is, we're going to do consultation overkill right now. So we can only take things one step at a time. We're consulting on residency, we're consulting on cannabis, right. We're consulting on Kahnawake, we're consulting on land use. Yeah. So
there's a lot going on.
Yeah, you can't overwhelm community. Gaming is still out there. We still need to consult. The whole taxation thing. Yes, we're slowly moving on it, but again, when it comes to consulting with the community, you can't just overwhelm everybody because it's going to get confusing, because it almost does for us. I have to get my papers and read, okay, what's today's agenda, and focus on that. Somebody will come in and ask me questions on different things, and I'm like, you know what, my mind space is here today because we do have a full plate. Mm-hmm. Issues keep coming up. And, sometimes we're putting out fires, on top of everything else that we do on a daily basis, the issues that keep coming to the table and we have to work with.
You're right. There is a lot of consultation going on issues that are controversial. I hate to use that word, but are more tumultuous, more serious. But I also hear a lot from the community that we're moving in a good direction with engaging the community, but at the same time, numbers are low in that consultation process. There's only 3 community members or 10 community members. Like, how do you balance that gauging in ensuring that you are getting good numbers, are
a reflection of the community.
Yeah.
Well, that's why for us we're doing the community phone survey to ensure that we get that reflection of community when it comes to cannabis specifically. There has been different methods. There was a kiosk set up for residency. There was a questionnaire that was supplied, and I think 126 roughly people answered. And a lot of work was put into doing it that way. So that's why we're going to try the telephone survey to ensure we reach out to people. We want to give people a forum for which they're comfortable to speak out and say what they really feel. Right. Sometimes in a community engagement or meeting, people are more reserved than they normally would be. So this is another reason for the phone survey. Mm-hmm.
It's not anonymous, but private.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually.
Or is it anonymous and private?
Good question. I'd have to get back to you on that one. Okay. But it is definitely private. And I believe it's anonymous because what I'm told, if I think back, is random phone numbers from the Mohawk directory are put into a pot, and the phone surveys will randomly select these numbers, so they really don't know who they're calling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it does meet some of the criteria, though, where you want people to get engaged, and maybe they don't feel like they want to do it in a public forum for fear
Right.
of having that backlash or criticism.
Mhm.
You know, and we all know it happens here, so I understand. You know, I think the community can understand that you guys are looking for ways to be able to circumvent or navigate those waters. But moving forward, what can the community expect as the consultation phase runs through the course of the summer, or how will it roll out?
Yeah, we're hoping by the end of July, you know, to have all of that done, and then we'll start having to compile all the information.
And what type of consultation? You're doing the phone survey?
Reaching out to organizations like we did with the tobacco industry. We went to
Okay.
each organization and got feedback, had meetings with them on, you know, their concerns or anything that they wanted to add.
Would you guys consider having a referendum that would engage the community that way, saying, do you want us to move forward with this, or is that just a discussion right now?
That would be just a discussion. Like I said, the reason for, you know, the survey and on telephone survey is trying to get that number that really reflects the community.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the years when they do these types of surveys, they say it's pretty consistent. Like sometimes there's been 3 surveyors,
Mm-hmm.
and they all come up with pretty much the same result. So you know that you're getting a real reflection of community sentiment on the subject.
Just curiously, is there some sort of office ordinance or policy in place that governs the way the Mohawk Council spends money? Like they have to have 51% of the community that agrees, or,
No.
you know, because why would we go to a referendum with the casino issue and not something similar to this?
I'm really not sure why they decided to go through the referendum. I mean, they had their reasons at the time,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's costly. It's very costly to do that.
Right.
That's why we're trying to get actual community engagement where somebody's going to give it a lot of thought, not just go there and mark off a ballot. You know, here we're having a whole educational process. We're getting people the opportunity to speak out by, you know, having the emails, you know, if they're not comfortable again in that public forum, they can always email in their views. Through the survey, they can actually call in and say, listen, I want to participate.
Mm-hmm.
So getting that direct one-on-one feedback from somebody, I think, is really valuable, and a lot more thought goes into it other than just yes or no.
Right. We're going to spend $1 million
Yeah.
without really doing much. But I was just, you know, I just was curious to know, like, if there was some sort of policy, or like, how does the Mohawk Council decide on these things, or is there an office ordinance, things like that. And the reason why I ask is because there are other tribes or even bands who do have that in their legislation. And which leads me to ask, have you guys looked at other bands within Canada that maybe have gotten into the cannabis industry already, or?
Well, we've looked, you know, we've spoken to some people, and the process is extremely long.
Okay.
So we looked at some that are in the process for 3 years and still don't have the okay for a building. I mean, there's just been different scenarios for everybody.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, just that we're hoping that the community will engage, you know, take a look at the information that's being given out there, and, you know, judge with knowledge.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time today.
Sure.